Hi again, folks. This is going to be a short video. I've got to run and do some other stuff here at the house. But I want to talk about this Assange thing once again. Julian Assange has been charged with 17 felonies, whatever the hell it is. And of course, the hyperventilating is off the charts. People like The Intercept and Michael Tracy and many other alternative truth tellers are out there fucking proclaiming that what's happening to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks it's just, they're being punished, and Assange is being punished for telling us all that truth, all the truth that journalist Assange told us. Bullshit. Bull fucking shit. Listen, first of all, when you have people like Mike Tracy and Michael Tracy and fucking The Intercept on your side, your credit goes down a few notches in my book. That's the first thing. Second thing is, this is ridiculous. This is The Intercept, first of all, which we know is operating and working with, hand in glove with, intelligence agencies. That's how they keep getting arrested. Whistleblowers keep getting arrested, and they keep publishing bullshit fucking truth from people like Reality Winner, which is obviously a fake name, a construct, probably CIA, who came out in her fucking leak that she gave to The Intercept was, look at how Russia was hacking our fucking elections, which didn't happen. So here's The Intercept. British authorities will have to decide whether or not to send the WikiLeaks founder to stand trial in the United States for publishing true information. This is something that is repeated over and over and over again. Michael Tracy, never forget, Assange undermined our sacred democracy in 2016 by providing citizenry with true information about what the country's most powerful political factions were doing in secret. The horror. But he goes on and on and on, not just about 2016, but throughout the whole history of WikiLeaks, publishing the truth, telling us the truth. Here's another one. This is a New York Times article that he is actually promoting. The New York Times, of course, defending WikiLeaks, making a big issue about the journalist being charged with 17 new counts by the Trump administration. He says, Julian Assange has been charged in a superseding indictment with violating the Espionage Act. Complete insanity. This is the gravest attack on the First Amendment in years, possibly ever. He's never heard of NDAA 2012. He's never heard of the lawsuit filed and went to court with Chomsky and Hedges and many others. Worried that the Obama administration was seeking the power to indefinitely detain journalists when they wrote about something they didn't like, when they talked to people they didn't want them to talk to. Really? They won that case, but then Obama took it appealed it to the Second Circuit Court and won. So that law is still in place. You would think that would be one of the biggest possible attack in history. Or Eugene Debs, another fine example. Or several other examples that have existed since Eugene Debs. If you don't know what happened to him and how he was put in jail, in prison, for 10 years, sentenced at least to 10 years, for simply speaking out against our involvement in World War I. That really happened. That guy, Eugene Debs, is real. Julian Assange is not. So here you have all the hyperbole. I want to share with you a little bit of the truth, because people like Michael Tracy and people like fucking The Intercept, people over at The Intercept, they value the truth, right? There shouldn't be a hive mind for everybody on the alternative media, on the left or on the right. There shouldn't be a hive mind, right? Everybody shouldn't be forced to conform to the established alternative, the alternative establishment thinking on this. Well, Michael Tracy has on several occasions in Twitter, condemned anybody who doesn't say that Julian Assange is a hero and a journalist. He's written that several times on fucking Twitter, as have many, many, many others. I've been attacked numerous times on this subject. Let's take a second to look back, shall we? Now, let's talk about me first of all. This is an article that I wrote that was picked up, unbeknownst to me, by InfoWars. Yep, back in the day, even though I still, at that point, I still didn't like fucking Alex Jones, every now and then, they would find something that I guess somebody there would find stuff that I wrote, and they would post it on InfoWars. So you can still find my work on InfoWars. And as you can see, they got advertising there. They're still making money off of me, which I never saw a nickel of. And I don't recall being asked whether or not they could do this. This is an article that I wrote talking about David Sanger and his involvement with the New York Times and Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, and the 92,000 files at their big fucking dump that actually were given to The Guardian, and then from The Guardian, from British intelligence operation, The Guardian, were passed out to Der Spiegel and the New York Times for publication. Well, let's cover that. I don't know if you know who David Sanger is. Please look him up. Not somebody that you would expect to be really on the alternative side. He's definitely an insider. He pushes back in the day, he still pushes the war. I guess if he's alive, he's still pushing the war on fucking Iran, on a war in North Korea. He is an insider's insider. And he is one of the ones working with the Aspen Strategy Group with Madeleine Albright and Richard Haas and Robert Zoellick, if you know who he is. And Philip Zelikow. Well, that's very nice. He's a member of Council on Foreign Relations and the Aspen Strategy Group. Nice, huh? That's David Sanger. He's a real insider's insider. And he was one of the ones, if not the main one, here in the States to work with the New York Times to figure out which of the leaks from WikiLeaks that was going to be published in the New York Times. Remember, they didn't get these straight from Assange or from WikiLeaks. They got them from The Guardian. I guess a Five Eyes Mockingbird type program. I'm going to read a bit of this for you. Now, this is the quote stuff, or the quotes from Sanger or whoever else I put in there, and then this stuff is actually my writing. Decades ago, Daniel Ellsberg chose Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky to edit his leaks, the Pentagon Papers. And now, Julian Assange, by forfeit, selects the likes of David Sanger. But did he really select anyone, or has this been such an important project that Julian Assange has little to nothing to do with it? Have a look at the obvious contradiction of Sanger's quote. If we had done nothing, if we had ignored it, talking about the leaks, it would have looked strange. I think it would also have been irresponsible. It is the responsibility of American journalism back to the founding of this country to get out and try to grapple with the hardest issues of the day and to do it independently of government, Sanger said. But then just a few moments later, he said, quote, we're explaining what's important here and what's not, and we're filtering it out to try to avoid the greatest harm to individuals, ongoing operations, and so forth. You know, had we waited until this just appeared on the internet and then tried to catch up with it, but we would not have had any real time to digest it, and certainly to think hard as we did about what should and what shouldn't be redacted. But we were concerned at the times, And it's one of the reasons that we went through so carefully to try to redact material that we thought could be damaging to individuals or undercut ongoing operations. That's the guy who published nothing anybody saw back in those days from WikiLeaks. All the truth that The Intercept is pushing, and fucking people like Michael Tracy are fucking, all the truth, all the truth. None of it was seen by either of those individuals at the Intercept or Michael Tracy or anybody until David Sanger, of all people, Aspen Institute, Council on Foreign Relations, hanging out with Madeleine Albright and all those. David Sanger made sure that it didn't mess with any of our ongoing operations. Quote, and we even took the very unusual step of showing the 100 cables or so that we were writing from to the U.S. government and asking them if they had any additional redactions to suggest. David Sanger, the guy who was actually the real publisher of the WikiLeaks. How is that independent from government? As Sanger has already claimed his responsibility and tradition of American journalism, and he goes on. I'll post a link to this right here. So you were at those meetings. This is what Howard Gross, I think, is a guy who was interviewing him. So you were at those meetings with members of the Obama administration going over documents, deciding what to publish and what not to. I was, he said, hearing the Obama administration argument about what not to publish. I was at some of the meetings at which the Obama administration made some requests. There were no decisions made there, and the Times took the requests back and considered them, and Bill Keller, our executive editor, and a number of other editors made the decisions in the end where they would draw the line. So, just so you know, what you saw was redacted. What you saw was edited. What you saw was carefully selected to make sure that it didn't have any ill effect on ongoing operations. Now, how is that different from the perception that these people suffer from at The Intercept and Michael Tracy and many, many, many others, that he is some kind of truth teller? How is that different? It's different because it was very important at the time for people to believe that it was a legitimate source of hard-hitting information. But it wasn't. It was an outlet for State Department memos, internal fucking ideas, people pitching theories back and forth with each other about various countries and about various people that we didn't like, that the State Department didn't like, in support of various ongoing operations. And yes, they had to pepper in some information in there in order to make it appear as if they were telling you the truth. But as the case was over and over and over again, as we have seen, they didn't tell us anything we didn't already know about. Even the fucking Collateral murder video, even that fucking video that came out, which I have gone over time and time again, that is a fog of war. It is a mistake, but it is not a war crime. That's why nobody was ever prosecuted with that. It does not depict what people thought it depicted. What they thought it showed. Every single time they had something that they thought was groundbreaking, it was already covered. It was already dealt with. Drones killing people. No fucking shit. We got fucking black bag crews putting fucking bags on people's heads and sending them off to extraordinary rendition. That was covered in 2003 and 2004, years before before WikiLeaks was even started. Back when fucking Julian Assange was still a criminal in fucking Australia. Fucking Afghanistan government. We'll talk about that in a second. But the point I'm trying to make here is, they were carefully selected. I don't even know if Assange was ever anything other than a front man. Once John Young decided he wasn't going to be the front man, I don't know if he was ever anything other than a front man. Don't know if he ever did anything. This is Chris Floyd. Now, I'll post links to these down below. I got to do this quickly. I'm sorry. I got to run through this. I'll post this down below. This is Chris Floyd. And Chris Floyd has the same issue, many of the same issues that I had. This is also in 2010. Many of the same issues that I had and still have. With old glorious Julian Assange clutching his fucking book from Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal, 9/11 truth advocate, by the way. Michael Tracy recently said he doesn't want to talk to he'll talk to anybody about anything, but he won't talk to those 9/11 truth people because it's just tedious. It's hard. You can't. There's no talking to him. He won't even entertain a conversation with people like that. If you're a big Julian Assange supporter, you don't want to hear anything about people saying there's questions about Julian Assange. Well, you're right in bed with fucking Michael Tracy, who doesn't want to hear from no fucking truthers. However, his big fucking hero, Julian Assange, who also doesn't want to hear nothing about truthers because it distracts from the real conspiracies he shows us, which, by the way, I'll show you in a second, aren't. But he's holding fucking Gore Vidal's book. Gore Vidal, who was a major league 9/11 truth advocate. And a well-spoken one at that. This is Chris Floyd. Another real fucking left-wing alternative media figure. A real one. Not like Michael Tracy. Not like The Intercept. But this is Chris Floyd. He's talking about, in this case, some of the stuff that... What are these leaks actually telling us? What did they show us? As for the corruption and incompetence of Afghanistan's government installed by the foreign occupiers and the untrustworthiness of the Afghan police and military being trained by foreign occupiers to do their dirty work for them, again, this too has been a running theme not only of media coverage but a plethora of official pronouncements. Has a month gone by in recent years when some top-level Washington figure has not scolded the powerless Afghan government for its manifold failings? Has a month gone by without long, detailed stories, usually in the Times itself, outlining the venality and brutality of the warlords, gangsters, religious extremists, and corruptocrats that the United States has empowered in the occupied land? Let me stop for a second. That's one of the big leaks in that 92,000 fucking file thing. All of this information about how inept Afghanistan was, how corrupt Pakistan was, and connected with Iran. Iran. You see Iran mentioned a lot in WikiLeaks, in their disclosures. Moving on. Where then are the revelations? Is anyone who has regularly read, well, the New York Times, the Guardian, and Der Spiegel could not remotely be surprised by any of the facts, as opposed to the oceans of spin and supposition buried in the mountain of leakage. These are not the Pentagon Papers or even the Downing Street memos. They do almost nothing to alter the public image of the war and tell almost nothing that we don't already know. Downing Street memo, for those of you who don't know, Downing Street memo was a real leak that took place where they decided they were going to have to shape the evidence in 2002, shape the evidence to fulfill their political agenda of bombing fucking Iraq. And that was a memo that was passed around in Downing Street. You should look that up. Again, you see the point I'm trying to make. A lot of real good journalists, real independent journalists, not just myself, but I used to be one, not just myself, but others, pointed out the fact that, wait a minute, everyone's hopping up and down about this new fucking leak they found at fucking WikiLeaks, but it's already been out there. Remember, it was selected for that reason. There was a selection process with David Sanger and the New York Times. Don't know who did it for Der Spiegel. Don't know who did it for the fucking for the Guardian. But I do know David Sanger, the New York Times editorial staff, the same people who lied constantly about going to war in Iraq, They were the ones who were serving as publishers and editors, not Julian Assange. They were the ones who made the decision. Ultimately, what you saw, the truth that you saw. In fact, the overall effect of the multi-part coverage of the documents is to paint a portrait of a plucky put-upon Americans trying their darndest to get a job done despite the dastardly dealings and gooberish bumblings of the ungrateful little brown wretches we are trying to save from themselves. The New York Times is quite explicit in this spin, quote, "The documents sketch a war hamstrung by Afghan government, police force, an army of questionable loyalty and competence, and by a Pakistani military that appears at best uncooperative and at worst to work from the shadows as an unspoken ally of the very insurgent forces that American-led coalition is trying to defeat," end quote. So you see, if our noble enterprise is failing, it's because the Afghans are idiots, Pakistanis are backstabbers, and the Iranians are behind it all, training Taliban fighters, making their bombs, and bankrolling the political opposition to America's appointed satrap, Hamid Karzai. And here we get down to it. Here's a metal more attractive for our militarists. The treachery of Iran is a constant theme in the leakage, both in the raw, unsifted, uncorroborated human intelligence and the diplomatic cables of puzzled occupiers who cannot fathom why there should be any opposition to their enlightened rule. That's Chris Floyd, and that's an article, Leaky Vessels, WikiLeaks Revelations Will Comfort Warmongers Confirm Conventional Wisdom. All that truth! All the truth that WikiLeaks gave us, the truth that came straight from the fucking mind of David Sanger and the New York Times editorial board after consulting with the Obama administration. Do you understand? This is Webster Tarpley. Say what you will about Webster Tarpley now. Back in 2011, the man had some fucking... Well, he had something. What he's got now is not much. He does get an honorable mention in this video because he writes this. Assange started his intensive deployment phase this year with a video of a Class A U.S. war crime in Iraq, which was very graphic, but which dealt with an incident which was already widely known. And it was. You just hadn't seen it on the mainstream media, and it makes you kind of wonder why you did all of a sudden see it in the mainstream media. Remember, WikiLeaks was being promoted 5 months prior to them ever publishing anything. They were being promoted by the mainstream media 5 months prior to them publishing anything. Then they needed some kind of big story, and they got it. The Collateral murder video. And every fucking outlet ran with it. Even though the story was a year or two, was old. It dated back to the Bush days. And this was during the Obama administration that it comes out. Anyway, moving on. The second document dump focused on Iraq, but now the targeting had shifted to Prime Minister Maliki, who they were trying to get rid of and demonize and undermine, and the Iranian asset whom the U.S., by some strange coincidence, was trying to oust as a leader of Iraq in favor of the new puppet Alawi. With the third document dump, this time involving State Department cables, we found out much derogatory gossip about such classic CIA targets as Russian Prime Minister Putin, Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi, the Russian-Italian Strategic Alliance, President Ferdinand Kirchner of Argentina, who I think is gone now, and President Karzai of Afghanistan, along with jabs at supposed U.S. allies who need to be kept off balance and dependent, including Saudi Arabian royal family and French President Sarkozy and others. WikiLeaks thus directs the vast majority of its fire against figures who were part of the CIA's enemy list. Again, that's Webster Tarpley. That's also 2011. But this is an interesting one. Now, these are the kinds of people that you're supposed to hate. Me, obviously, Chris Floyd, Webster Tarpley, And of course, this one, John Young. Now, John Young has been publishing leaks on Cryptome since, I believe, 96, 97, in that area. He's been around for a while, and he was asked to be part of this group. They approached him and asked him to be part of this fucking group, part of WikiLeaks. In fact, they wanted him to be the front man for it, according to him, instead of Julian Assange, sleazeball Assange. And he was on board for a while until he realized there was $5 million that he was trying to raise for some unknown reason. He had people working for free, hacktivists working for free, real ones. They also came along with the Chinese hacktivists, and if you know anything about what's going on in China back then and still today, those hacktivists are all fucking CIA, every single one of them. So you had this main core of CIA quote-unquote hackers and Assange, and they go to John Young, and they got this idea for this fucking site, but they also have this idea that they won't edit anything. They'll just take it all in, promise, they're going to have anonymity. They don't want people who are sending the stuff in to tell them who they are, and they'll publish it without even fucking thinking about it. They'll put it up on their website. That's the whole plan. That's the whole theory. But of course, John Young says you can't fucking do that. You're just begging for some intelligence agency to be fucking spoon-feeding you bullshit. And you'll post it and say it's a leak. That's what John Young told them. Then, of course, he finds out he wants to... that model is not conducive. Then, of course, Julian Assange wants $5 million so he can go around partying and I guess, sleep humping Scandinavian models or whoever the hell they were. So, John Young gets out. But then, in 2010, Young sits for an interview, I think, and has this to say. WikiLeaks are for hire mercenaries, says Cryptome. Private enterprise is not public interest. WikiLeaks has always been a commercial enterprise hiding behind a narcissistic public interest, PR, says Cryptome operator John Young in a scathing critique of the site. Whistleblower site Cryptome began publishing documentaries in '96, incurring the wrath of U.S. and UK governments. The archives endures. Young was invited to be the public face of WikiLeaks as the formation of the venture, but declined. Now Young believes WikiLeaks is selling its secrets for commercial gain. Speaking to U.S. talk radio, Young compared Julian Assange to Henry Kissinger and other spook insiders who have turned their insider knowledge into a lucrative sideline. Quote, what has been released has been much less voluminous than the attention about them, said Young. Quote, the goal is to exaggerate the importance of WikiLeaks, end quote. The goal is to exaggerate the importance of WikiLeaks. The goal is to exaggerate the importance of WikiLeaks. What the fuck is that? What is that? What the fuck is that? Is that supposed to be some kind of like... Remember when they did this? Oh, look at that. Oh, you can see the humanity in his eyes. Oh, I'm going to be poor. They're going to torture me. How come he lived there for all these fucking years and you got the videos of him riding on a skateboard, clean shaven? But now he's Grandpa fucking Joe. Now he's David Letterman after a couple of years off fucking TV. What is that? Did they Photoshop his eyes? Because one looks like he's looking this way and one looks like he's looking this way. They Photoshopped his eyes? Give him that saintly fucking, appearance? He's about to be martyred for your sins? The goal is to exaggerate the importance of WikiLeaks, said John Young. From the earliest discussions Young alleges WikiLeaks intended to pimp out the information for funds. Quote, well, it only came up in the topic of raising $5 million in the first year. That was the first red flag that I heard about. I thought that they were actually a public interest group up until then, but as soon as I heard that, I know that they were a criminal organization. Assange is a narcissistic individual, claims Young. WikiLeaks is willing to sacrifice Bradley Manning and anyone else to advance their own interest. Soros and the Kochs have their lesser-known internet promoters backing WikiLeaks generously. What the fuck is that? The free stuff is meant to lure volunteers and promote high-profile public service, lip-syncing with risk, with the enterprise funded by selling costly material sold on the black market of worldwide spying in the tradition of public benefit ops. ID, spies, and ever more spies. No better customer for illicit information than those with depthless pockets. Soros and the Kochs have their lesser-known internet promoters backing WikiLeaks generously, and they expect good return on their investment, not just the freebies used to attract attention. Wow. So he's suggesting that not only do they get the attention, and then they promote bullshit like anti-Iran stuff, blaming the problems with Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan, the occupation, illegal occupation of Afghanistan, blaming it on the Afghan government and blaming it on the Afghan soldiers. Not only do they are able to use the truth we were told by WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, all that truth, but according to him, real whistleblowers would come in, and that information could then be sold to other people, to other like businesses, like Soros, like Koch brothers, for example. That's fascinating. I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about that angle, but of course it makes sense. I mean, if something comes in that's damaging to them, then they can certainly promote it. Or if something comes in that's damaging to their competition, they could certainly use that and sell that information to vested interests, billionaires, who could make use of that information. That's a fascinating theory. I hadn't thought about that. Leave it to John Young, somebody who knows a little bit about the leaking industry, about publishing leaks. He's been doing it since 1996. Some 10, 12 years, 12 years longer than WikiLeaks. Anyway, there you have it. There's 3-4 people. Myself, Chris Floyd, Webster Tarpley, and of course John Young himself, who strongly disagree with all that truth you're getting from fucking Julian Assange. Julian Assange and WikiLeaks fulfilled a purpose. They were a honeypot, and they were a source for demonizing various countries, organizations, people that the CIA wanted demonized. Their truth, all that truth you got from fucking WikiLeaks. That's one aspect of two aspects. The honeypot aspect was they certainly were having problems with people leaking things like the Downing Street memos, like the fucking Abu Ghraib photos. They were having problems with people leaking shit, and they knew their 100-year war was not going to fucking survive. Their endless war, the long war, was not going to survive if they couldn't curtail that. So they created the penultimate website for you to send your information as a whistleblower. Now, as John Young pointed out, it's very possible some of those people that was never published, And instead it was fucking sold to various vested interests and billionaires. But others may have just been fucking flat out snatched up and arrested quietly and removed quietly. We'll never know. We'll never know. We'll never know what fucking damage WikiLeaks actually did. Unless somebody leaks it. We'll never know what damage they actually did. But here you have people just worshiping at the fucking ground of our Savior, holy, holy Julian Assange. Gee, look at that. He's got a little beard and a little mustache. And I don't know. Could that be identity politics? Don't know. Whatever it was, someone bought it hook, line, and sinker. I guess because it's more politically and career-wise, it's more advantageous to run along with that theme and that story. Much like it is more advantageous to avoid talking to 9/11 truth advocates altogether. In spite of the fact that your fucking God hero is holding up a book when he was they staged that his exit from the embassy. He's holding up a book written by a 9/11 truth advocate. Aside from that. Anyway, I just had to say this. Again, it's a longer video than I wanted it to be. I got to run. I got stuff I got to get done. I thank you very much for your time. There's my Julian Assange rant once again. Sorry, but there you go. Hope you guys have a very good weekend. Take care. And like I said, tomorrow I'll probably do a video on Jussie Smollett again. Holy crap. Anyway, take care. Thank you very much.